She took care of an amnesiac stranger not knowing he was a billionaire who would change her life. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories every week. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. She took care of an amnesiac stranger not knowing he was a billionaire who would change her life. The night was cold and restless, the kind that made the world feel empty and endless. Lena drove through the quiet stretch of highway just outside Portland, her windshield wipers fighting against the steady rain. She was exhausted, both in body and spirit. The free clinic she had run for 3 years had finally shut down that morning. The rent was overdue, the supplies were gone, and the landlord had changed the locks before she could even pack her things. Her phone buzzed with another unpaid bill notification. She turned it face down on the seat and whispered, "Not tonight, please." Then she saw him. At first, it looked like a bundle of clothes tossed on the roadside. But when her headlights caught movement, a faint lift of a hand, Lena slammed the brakes and jumped out, rain drenching her within seconds. A man lay half-conscious near the ditch, his hair soaked with mud and blood. No wallet, no ID, only a broken wristwatch still ticking weakly against his skin. "Sir, can you hear me?" she shouted, pressing 2 fingers against his neck. The pulse was faint but steady. His lips moved, a whisper lost in the rain. She called for an ambulance, but the operator's tone was detached. "No ID, no insurance, no admission at county tonight unless it's life-threatening." And Lena stared at the phone in disbelief. "He's breathing, but barely." "I'm sorry, ma'am. That's the policy." She hung up. Her heart pounded. She looked down at the stranger, at the rain pooling around his face. Something inside her refused to walk away. So she dragged him into her car, laid him across the back seat, and drove toward her small rented apartment above the old bakery downtown. By the time she finished cleaning his wound, her hands were trembling from exhaustion. She bandaged his head with strips of clean cloth and wiped the dirt from his face. Beneath the bruises, he looked young, maybe mid-30s, sharp jawline, calm even in unconsciousness. A man who did not belong in her world of second-hand scrubs and discount soup cans. When he finally stirred hours later, she was sitting beside him, fighting sleep. His voice came out rough and uncertain. "Where am I?" "You are safe," she said softly. "You had an accident. Do you remember your name?" He blinked, confused, eyes darting around the small apartment, the medical kit on the floor, the flickering lamp, the rain against the window. "My name?" He hesitated, then shook his head slowly. "I do not know." Lena felt a chill run through her. "You do not remember anything?" He looked at her again, fear flickering behind his eyes. "Nothing," she exhaled, half in relief, half in disbelief. "All right," she murmured. "Until we figure it out, we will just call you Adam." "Adam," he repeated, the name strange yet comforting on his tongue. Lena smiled faintly. "Good. Adam it is." Outside, the rain softened to a drizzle. Inside, the tiny apartment smelled of antiseptic and coffee. Lena sat watching him, wondering who he really was. A traveler? A fugitive? Someone running from something or toward it? She glanced at the cracked wristwatch she had taken off him earlier. Its face was shattered, but one detail stood out. A tiny silver engraving on the back that read, "Carter Holdings." Lena turned the watch over in her hand, unaware that this small piece of metal would soon pull her into a world far beyond anything she had ever known, and that the stranger asleep on her couch was not just a man with no memory, but a billionaire whose life and heart she was about to change forever. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets washed clean under a pale gray sky. Lena woke up to the soft sound of footsteps in her small kitchen. She froze for a second before remembering the stranger sleeping on her couch. When she stepped out of her room, she found him standing there, barefoot, staring at a mug of instant coffee like it was something from another planet. "Morning," she said quietly. "I did not have much, but coffee helps with headaches." He turned, eyes still hazy but kind. "Thank you for everything. I do not even know your name." "Lena," she replied, trying to smile. "And you are Adam, remember?" He nodded slowly. "Right, Adam." For the next few days, her small apartment became a strange balance of silence and small discoveries. Lena worked part-time at a nearby clinic for cash, while Adam stayed behind, helping with simple chores as he recovered. The first time she came home to see her floor swept and her leaky faucet fixed, she almost cried. "You did not have to do that," she said. He shrugged. "I needed something to do. My hands remember more than my head does." Sometimes, when he moved, Lena noticed tiny gestures that did not fit a man with no memory, how he straightened his sleeves as if he was used to wearing suits, how he stood near windows like he was used to looking down from tall places. One evening, she found him sitting on the couch, watching a news channel on the old TV. His face suddenly tightened. A business headline flashed across the screen. Carter Holdings, faces board scandal amid CEO's absence. Adam's hand trembled slightly. That name, Carter, it feels like I know it. Lena frowned, remembering the engraving on his broken watch. Carter Holdings, she repeated. It is on your watch, too. Maybe it means something? He took the watch from her, turning it over in his palm. The glass was cracked, the hands frozen at 9:47. Maybe it is where I worked, he said, though doubt clouded his voice. But why can I not remember? Memory loss after trauma can be temporary, she said gently. Your brain just needs time to feel safe again. He looked at her for a long moment. Safe, he repeated softly. That is what this place feels like. That night, Lena lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She told herself she was only helping him because it was right, but the truth was, she liked having him there. The quiet laughter they shared over burnt pancakes, the way he listened when she talked about her mother's heart condition, the steady warmth in his voice when he said her name, it had started to mean something. Days turned into weeks. Adam's strength returned. He began walking to the small park nearby, sketching the world with a pencil she had left on the table. One afternoon, Lena joined him on the bench, holding 2 cups of cheap coffee. Do you ever feel like your heart remembers things your head forgot? He asked, eyes on the cloudy sky. She smiled. Every day. He turned to her. I keep feeling like I lost something important. Someone important. Maybe you are meant to find it again, she said. Then, something happened. One Sunday morning, a black car pulled up in front of her apartment. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the address. Lena's heart pounded. Adam was inside, drying dishes. When the men knocked, he looked up sharply. Mr. Carter? One of them said. Grant Carter? The name hit the air like thunder. Lena's hands went cold. Adam or Grant stood frozen. The men continued. Sir, we have been looking for you for weeks. There was an accident on Highway 17. Your brother reported you missing. The board has been in chaos since you disappeared. Grant's face went pale. My brother, he whispered. Then louder, almost to himself. Nathan. Lena felt her knees weaken. You are the CEO? He looked at her, pain and confusion swirling in his eyes. I did not know. I swear, I did not know. One of the men stepped forward. Sir, your company needs you immediately. The press is already aware you have been found. The living room suddenly felt too small. Cameras flashed outside the window, reporters shouting questions. Someone must have leaked the location. Lena stepped back, her voice barely above a whisper. All this time, you did not tell me. I could not tell you what I did not remember, he said desperately. Lena, please believe me. But she was already shaking her head, overwhelmed by the noise, the flashing lights, the sudden distance between them. He reached out, but she pulled away. Go, she said quietly. That world is waiting for you. It is not mine. Grant stood in the doorway, torn between duty and something deeper. You saved my life, he said. That will never change. Lena forced a small smile that did not reach her eyes. Then go live it. As the car door closed behind him, the rain started again, gentle but relentless. Lena stood at her window, watching the black sedan disappear into the gray horizon. The only sound left in the room was the faint ticking of the broken watch she had placed back on the table, its hands still frozen at 9:47, waiting for the moment when time and love might start moving again. 2 weeks passed, but to Lena, the days felt like months. The city moved on, but her small apartment stayed quiet. The couch where Grant had slept was neatly folded, the broken watch still lying on the table beside a half-finished cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Every night, she caught herself listening for his voice, the sound of footsteps in her kitchen, the gentle clink of dishes that once filled the silence. She tried to tell herself that it had all been a strange dream, that the man she helped was just another patient who had recovered and gone back to his life. But when the news began showing his face, the same face that had once smiled across her dinner table, she could not look away. "Grant Carter returns to Carter Holdings after mysterious disappearance," the headlines read. He stood at the podium in a dark suit, confident, polished, and unreachable. The reporter's microphone caught his voice clearly. "I owe my survival to the kindness of a stranger," he said, his tone measured and public. "Someone who reminded me that compassion still exists in this world." Lena's breath caught. He never said her name, but she knew he was talking about her. Still, the world he returned to was not the same. Inside the towers of Carter Holdings, the air was sharp with greed and tension. His brother Nathan, who had taken temporary control of the company, greeted him with a practiced smile. "You are back," Nathan said. "We were worried." Grant studied him quietly. "You did not seem worried when the board started selling off the charity divisions." Nathan shrugged. "We had to protect profits. Sentiment does not pay shareholders." Grant said nothing, but a piece of his lost memory suddenly returned the night of the crash, the screech of tires. Nathan's voice on the phone saying, "Make sure it looks like an accident." The realization chilled him. He had not just lost his memory. Someone had wanted him gone. Meanwhile, Lena returned to the small clinic she had once run. With a small donation from an anonymous sender, she began treating patients again, one by one. She told herself she did not care where the money came from, but deep down, she already knew. Each envelope arrived with no signature, only the initials A.C. written in careful ink. One rainy afternoon, she was cleaning the supply shelf when she heard the clinic bell ring. She turned and froze. Grant stood in the doorway, holding an umbrella dripping with rain. He looked different now, not the lost man she had rescued, but not quite the untouchable CEO from the television either. His eyes were softer. "Hello, Lena," he said quietly. She took a step back. "You should not be here. You have cameras following you everywhere." "I turned them off," he said. "I needed to see you." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. "You did not owe me anything," she said finally. "You did not have to send the money." "It was not charity," he replied. "It was gratitude, and maybe something more." "Oh," she looked at him, torn between anger and relief. "You disappeared, Grant. One day you were here, the next you were on every screen in the country. You never called. You never even said goodbye." He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "I did not remember my name, but I remembered your kindness. When everything came back, I was afraid. Afraid that the man you saved was not someone worth saving." Her expression softened slightly. "And now? Now I know who I am," he said. "And I know that the only time I felt like a better man was when I was with you." Before she could answer, a loud crash echoed outside. Tires screeched, voices shouted. Grant's driver ran through the door, breathless. "Sir, there has been an incident at headquarters. Police are there. Your brother Nathan has been arrested." Grant's face hardened. "For what?" "Tampering with your car the night of the accident. Someone leaked the evidence." Lena stared at him. "So it was not just fate that night?" He shook his head. "No, it was a choice someone made. But your choice saved me." He turned to her, eyes full of emotion. "Lena, I do not want this to end with thank you letters or secret donations. I want it to mean something real." She hesitated, still unsure if their worlds could ever fit together. "Grant, you belong to a life that people like me only see on screens. I fix small things. You build empires." He smiled faintly. "Empires fall. What you build stays in people." Outside, the rain eased, and sunlight broke through the clouds. He reached into his coat pocket and placed something in her hand. It was the same wristwatch, perfectly restored, its hands moving again. "I had it repaired," he said. "It stopped the night we met. Now it works, just like I do." Lena looked down at the watch, then at him. "You did not have to bring this back." "I did," he said, "because every second that passed after that night brought me back here to you." For the first time, she did not look away. The clock on the wall kept ticking softly, steady as a heartbeat. In that quiet clinic, where she had once lost everything, something new began to take shape, slow, honest, and alive. Grant smiled. "Maybe time stopped that night so I could learn what matters before it started again." Lena nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then let it keep moving." Outside, the street shimmered with light as the last raindrops fell. For the first time in a long while, Both of them felt the same thing, that sometimes losing everything, even memory itself, is what it takes to remember what love truly means. The next morning, the small clinic felt different. The air smelled faintly of rain and disinfectant, but there was a quiet brightness to it, like the place itself had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Lena arrived early, carrying 2 cups of coffee. When she opened the door, she found Grant already there, sleeves rolled up, helping a little boy fix the leg of a broken chair in the waiting room. He looked up when she entered, that familiar, calm smile on his face. "Good morning," he said. "Your handyman reporting for duty." Lena laughed softly, setting the coffee down. "You? A billionaire doing carpentry? Call it therapy," he replied. "Paperwork and meetings never healed anyone. But this," he gestured at the small boy grinning beside him, "this feels real." The boy's mother thanked them and left with a smile. When the door closed, Lena turned to Grant. "So what happens now? Nathan's arrested, your company's all over the news. You could lose everything." Grant wiped his hands with a towel and leaned against the counter. "Maybe I need to. The company became everything I was. I forgot what it meant to live for something other than profit." "Oh." She crossed her arms, studying him carefully. "You talk like a man planning to disappear again." He shook his head. "Not disappear. Redefine." He looked around the small clinic, his eyes softening. "What if Carter Holdings became something different? A foundation. Real care for people who get ignored. You built this place once, Lena. What if we build it again? Together?" Her breath caught. "Grant, that is not your world." He smiled faintly. "Then I will make it mine." Who ate? For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the clock filled the silence, steady and certain. Lena looked away first. "You cannot fix the world just because you feel guilty." He nodded slowly. "Maybe not, but I can start with one small place, and the woman who reminded me what compassion looks like." Weeks passed, and together they began transforming the clinic. Reporters tried to follow them, but Grant refused interviews. Instead, he focused on the work, buying new equipment, hiring staff, and paying off the medical debts of people who had nowhere else to go. Every day he arrived early, often before Lena. He would carry boxes, assemble exam tables, and joke with the patients waiting outside. The man who once signed million-dollar contracts now swept the floors when the day was done. One evening, after closing, Lena sat on the porch steps, exhausted but smiling. Grant brought her a cup of tea and sat beside her. The city glowed in the distance, soft and golden under the setting Sunday. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to believe my life was small, that I would never matter beyond this neighborhood." He turned to her, voice gentle. "You mattered the moment you stopped your car that night." She glanced down, trying to hide the emotion rising in her chest. "And you mattered the moment you remembered who you wanted to be." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I need you to see this." Inside was a document with the Carter Foundation logo at the top. Community Health Division, Director, Lena Moore. She looked up, stunned. "Director?" He nodded. "This is not charity. It is partnership. The foundation will fund clinics like yours across the state, and I want you to lead it." Her hands trembled slightly. "Grant, I do not know if I can—" "Yes, you can," he said firmly. "You already did it once, with nothing but kindness. Imagine what you could do with resources." Tears welled in her eyes. "Why me?" He smiled softly. "Because when I had nothing, no name, no memory, you still saw me as someone worth saving. Now it is my turn to believe in you." For a long moment, Lena could not speak. The weight of everything, their first meeting, the lost time, the rediscovery settled quietly in her heart. Finally, she whispered, "Okay, but on one condition." "Name it." "Though, you still have to make coffee every morning." Grant laughed, the kind of laugh that came from somewhere deep and free. "Deal." The following months were filled with motion and purpose. News outlets eventually caught wind of the new Carter Foundation initiative, but this time the headlines were different. Former CEO turns company into nonprofit healthcare network. And investors were shocked. Critics called him reckless, but thousands of families lined up at newly opened community clinics that carried Lena's vision. One crisp autumn evening, the foundation hosted a modest ceremony to celebrate the first anniversary of its reopening. The event was held in the same building where Lena's original clinic had once stood. Strings of warm lights hung across the courtyard, and laughter echoed through the night. Lena stood by the entrance, watching children chase each other between tables. When Grant joined her, she smiled. "You did it," he shook his head. "We did it." As the guests began to gather around, a staff member brought out a glass case to unveil a small display in the lobby. Inside it lay the broken wristwatch, now restored, ticking steadily under soft light. The plaque below it read, "The moment I lost my memory, I found love. Carter Foundation, dedicated to compassion and truth. Endvert." Grant took Lena's hand, his voice quiet. "Time stopped for me once. You made it start again." She squeezed his hand gently. "Then do not waste another second." The crowd applauded as the lights shimmered around them. For the first time, Lena felt the weight of the past lift completely. What had begun as an act of kindness on a rainy highway had become something far greater, a story not of luck or power, but of two people who found purpose through each other. As music played softly and laughter filled the air, Grant leaned close and whispered, "This is what forever looks like, Lena." She smiled, her eyes bright under the glow of the lights. "No," she said, "this is what healing looks like." And together, they stepped forward into the future, two lives, one promise, and a love that had learned how to begin again. Winter came quietly that year, soft and silver across the city. The Carter Foundation had grown beyond anything Lena ever imagined. What started as a single neighborhood clinic had become a network of healing centers spreading across the state. Each building carried the same symbol etched on the glass doors, a small heart inside a clock face. It was Grant's idea, a reminder that compassion and time were the only real currencies that mattered. Lena still worked the early shifts, just as she always had. She said it kept her humble. Grant would arrive after dawn, sleeves rolled up, greeting staff by name. The world had started to see him differently, not as the untouchable billionaire he once was, but as the man who chose empathy over empire. One morning, as snowflakes danced outside the window, Lena found Grant sitting in her office, reviewing a proposal. He looked tired but content. "You are here early," she said, setting her coffee down. He smiled faintly. "I could say the same about you. You should take a vacation." She raised an eyebrow. "You should practice what you preach." He leaned back in his chair, eyes soft. "Fair point." He hesitated before adding, "There is something I want to show you later." Lena tilted her head. "Another surprise?" "Maybe," he said, a spark of mischief in his voice. "Just finish your shift, and meet me at 7. The day passed in a blur of patience, phone calls, and laughter from the staff. When the evening came, Grant was waiting outside in his car. The city lights flickered against the falling snow as they drove through the quiet streets. Lena watched him from the passenger seat, her heart calm but curious. "Are you going to tell me where we are going?" she asked. "No," he said simply, "but you will recognize it." When the car finally stopped, Lena's breath caught. They were back where everything began, the old highway, the curve where she had found him lying in the rain a year ago. The world looked different now, blanketed in snow instead of storm water, but the memory returned as vividly as the night itself. Grant stepped out and opened her door. "Come on," he said softly. "I promise this time it will not end with an ambulance call." She laughed, stepping into the snow. A small wooden sign stood nearby. "Carter Memorial Garden, dedicated to the power of kindness. I had this built a few months ago," he explained. "Every person we help plants a tree here. It is where I wanted to bring you tonight." The path was lined with lanterns, their light golden against the snow. They walked together until they reached a small clearing. In the center stood a single oak tree, branches strung with tiny white lights. Beneath it, a stone plaque bore her name, Lena Moore, the first act of kindness that changed everything. Lena pressed her hand to her chest. "Grant, this is beautiful." He looked at her quietly. "You gave me my life back. The least I can do is give you a piece of it." For a long moment, they stood under the tree in silence. The air was crisp, their breath visible in the cold. Then Grant turned toward her, his expression tender but steady. "There is one more thing," he said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. Lena blinked. "Grant, what are you doing?" He smiled nervously. "Something I should have done a long time ago." He opened the box, and inside was a simple silver ring. The band shimmered faintly in the lantern light, engraved with a single word. "Found." "I do not have a speech," he said softly. All I know is that you found me when I was nothing. You gave me purpose when I had lost my name, and you made me believe in love that does not need titles or wealth. I do not want another second to pass without you beside me. Lena Moore, will you marry me? Lena stood frozen, the world blurring through her tears. The man kneeling before her was no longer the powerful CEO or the lost stranger on the roadside. He was simply Grant, the man who had learned how to love again. She knelt down with him, her voice trembling. You did not have to build gardens or foundations to prove your heart, Grant. You already did that the night you remembered who you wanted to be. He smiled through the cold. Is that a yes? She nodded, tears glimmering like frost on her lashes. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Grant slipped the ring onto her finger, and she threw her arms around him. Snow swirled around them, gentle and endless, as if the sky itself was blessing what had begun in the rain. Later, as they walked back toward the car, Lena glanced at the oak tree once more. You know, she said softly, when I found you here, I thought fate had played a cruel joke. Now I think maybe it was mercy. He reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. Fate gave me a second chance. You taught me what to do with it. When they reached the car, he looked back one last time at the garden. Do you hear that? He asked. She frowned. Hear what? The wind, he said with a smile. It sounds like rain again, like the night we met. She laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. Then let it rain forever. As they drove away, the snow began to fall harder, melting into soft drops against the windshield like the sky remembering the night a lost man was found. Behind them, the lanterns in the garden kept glowing, steady and warm, just like the clock that now hung in the foundation's lobby, its hands forever moving, its inscription clear for everyone who entered to read. Love begins where memory ends. And from that night on, every tick of that clock marked not the passing of time, but the promise that true love-like healing never really ends. Spring arrived with the kind of warmth that made everything feel new again. The snow melted from the rooftops, the garden by the old highway bloomed in soft color, and the city around them seemed to move with a lighter rhythm. Lena and Grant had decided on a small wedding, simple, quiet, and honest, just like the way they had met. The ceremony was held in the courtyard of the first clinic they rebuilt together. Rows of white folding chairs lined the path, surrounded by fresh tulips and ivy. The staff from the Carter Foundation were there, along with patients whose lives had changed because of Lena's work. No celebrity guests, no flashing cameras, only laughter, warmth, and the sound of music drifting in the afternoon air. Lena stood before a small mirror inside the clinic's waiting room, adjusting the lace sleeve of her dress. It was not a designer gown. It was hand-sewn by one of the nurses as a gift. The simple fabric caught the sunlight in the most delicate way. She looked at herself for a long moment, barely believing how far she had come. A soft knock came at the door. Ready? A familiar voice asked. It was Mrs. Jensen, the elderly patient who had once called Lena her angel. She smiled, holding a small bouquet. You have saved lives, dear. Now it is time to save your own heart. Lena laughed gently. Thank you. I think it is already saved. Outside, Grant waited beneath the same oak tree where he had proposed. He wore a simple gray suit, no tie, his hair touched by the Sunday when the music began, and Lena stepped through the doorway. Everyone turned, their faces glowing with joy. Grant's eyes never left her. In that moment, he did not see the audience, the flowers, or the cameras someone had insisted on setting up for the Foundation's archive. He saw only her, the woman who had found him when he was lost, who had shown him what it meant to live with purpose again. When she reached him, she whispered, You look nervous. He grinned softly. I am. I have been signing contracts all my life, but this is the first one that truly matters. The officiant smiled as they joined hands. Marriage, he said, is not built on perfection. It is built on remembering to choose each other, even when the world forgets you. As they exchanged vows, a soft breeze carried through the garden, brushing the leaves of the oak tree above them. I, Grant Carter, he began, promised to never forget the woman who reminded me what it means to feel alive. When I lost my memory, I found love. When I found love, I found myself. Lena's eyes shimmered as she spoke next. I, Lena Moore, promised to never stop believing in the man who chose compassion over wealth, truth over comfort, and love over fear. You were my patient once, but now you are my home. There were tears, quiet applause, and the sound of laughter blending into the soft hum of the city beyond the gates. When the ceremony ended, Grant leaned close and whispered, "Do you remember what you said the night you saved me?" Lena smiled. "I said you could be whoever you wanted to be until you remembered." He brushed his thumb along her cheek. "Then I choose to be yours. Forever." The reception was held right there in the courtyard. Tables were covered in linen, candles flickered in glass jars, and children ran through the aisles with sparklers. There were no luxury dishes or famous speeches, just homemade food and the kind of joy that fills a place with light. At sunset, one of the staff members tapped a glass and announced a surprise. The guests turned toward a large screen on the clinic wall. It showed photos and short clips, Grant working alongside volunteers, Lena laughing with patients, and the first brick being laid for the new clinics. The final image appeared, the two of them standing by the oak tree in the snow, the words, "Love begins where memory ends." The crowd clapped and cheered, some wiping away tears. Grant looked at Lena, his voice full of quiet awe. "I used to think legacy was about buildings, stocks, and numbers. Now I know it is about moments like this one." Lena squeezed his hand. "Then let us keep building moments." As night settled, the sky filled with lanterns. Each guest held one, releasing it slowly into the air. The lanterns floated upward, glowing like stars, drifting toward the horizon. Grant wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Do you think they will reach heaven?" She leaned her head on his chest. "I think they already have." The lights from the city reflected off the clinic windows, and for a brief, perfect second, everything went still, the noise, the crowd, the world. Just two people standing beneath a sky full of light, grateful for every second that had led them there. Later that night, when the guests had gone and the music faded, Grant and Lena walked through the empty courtyard. The air was cool, the oak tree rustling softly. Grant took out his watch, the same one she had found on him a year before. It ticked steadily now, its hands gliding past midnight. He handed it to her. "Would you keep it for me?" She looked at him, puzzled. "Why?" "Because if it ever stops again," he said, smiling, "I want it to stop in your hands." Lena laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that carried peace instead of pain. "Deal." They stood there for a long moment, the lights dimming around them. In that stillness, the clock kept ticking, proof that time could wound, time could heal, and sometimes time could even bring back the people you were never meant to lose. As they walked inside, hand in hand, the final lantern drifted high above the city, its flames steady against the wind. And for those who believed in miracles, it was clear that some stories are not just told, they are lived, one heartbeat, 1 second, and one act of kindness at a time. The first year of their marriage moved like a quiet river, steady, calm, and full of reflection. Life for Lena and Grant settled into a rhythm that felt almost unreal compared to the chaos that had once defined them. The Carter Foundation flourished beyond every expectation, but Grant often said that its real success was not in the numbers. It was in the stories of the people who walked through those clinic doors. Every morning, he and Lena still arrived at the same time, coffee cups in hand. She wore her scrubs. He carried his tablet. The staff loved watching them move through the halls together, two people who had turned tragedy into something beautiful. But even in peace, life still had its tests. One spring afternoon, Lena received a phone call from the county hospital. Her mother's condition had worsened, and the doctors were not optimistic. Grant immediately cleared his schedule and drove her there. The ride was silent except for the sound of rain on the windshield, just like the night they had met. At the hospital, Lena sat beside her mother's bed, holding her frail hand. Grant stood quietly by the doorway, not wanting to intrude but unwilling to leave her alone. Her mother smiled faintly when she saw him. "You are the one she saved," she whispered. "Then you saved her back." Grant knelt beside the bed and nodded gently. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to prove it." Lena's mother passed peacefully that night. The funeral was small, attended mostly by staff from the foundation and a few patients who had known her. Afterward, Lena sat beneath the oak tree at the memorial garden, the same place where Grant had proposed. The air was cool, filled with the scent of early blossoms. "She was proud of you," Grant said softly, sitting beside her. Lena nodded, wiping her tears. "She always said that love is not just about what you feel, it is about what you build. I think she would have liked what we are building." He took her hand, his thumb tracing small circles against her skin. "She would have loved it. and she would have loved seeing you smile again. Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. I will, in time. Grief is not something you get over. It is something you carry until it becomes lighter. Grant looked out at the trees, swaying gently in the wind. Then let us carry it together. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the weight began to lift. Lena returned to work, pouring her heart into the new branch of the foundation, named after her mother, the Grace Moore Center for Compassionate Care. Patients from across the state came there, many unable to afford treatment elsewhere. Every wall carried a simple phrase, kindness is the medicine, time cannot replace. One evening, after a long day, Grant found Lena in the garden behind the center, watching the sunset. The light bathed her in gold, and for a moment he was back on that rainy highway, seeing her for the first time. You know, he said softly, when I first woke up in your apartment, I thought I was lost. Now I realize that was the moment I finally came home. Lena smiled, turning to him. You did not just find home, Grant. You built it. He laughed quietly, with the best partner a man could ask for. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the lights in the garden began to glow. The trees they had planted together shimmered with tiny lanterns, their glow reflecting off the inscription at the gate, Love begins where memory ends. Grant reached for her hand. Ready to go home? She nodded. Always. They walked toward the car, their silhouettes fading into the warm twilight. The garden rustled softly behind them, alive with the whisper of the wind, a reminder that even after loss, even after time has taken what it will, love remains. Not as a grand miracle, but as something steady, something real, and something that keeps the world turning one quiet heartbeat at a time. A full year passed since the opening of the Grace Moore Center, and the foundation had grown into something even Lena could hardly recognize. It was no longer just a group of clinics. It had become a living movement of kindness. People from across the country donated, volunteered, and built community projects under its name. But for Lena and Grant, the greatest reward was not the success, it was the peace they found in the ordinary days between all the work. On a mild autumn morning, Lena walked through the clinic halls, checking on patients. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and cinnamon coffee from the break room. When she entered one of the rooms, she froze for a moment. A teenage boy sat on the bed, his head wrapped in bandages, his eyes frightened. Hi, she said gently. I am Dr. Moore. You are safe now. He blinked, confused. I do not remember what happened. Something in his trembling voice pulled at her heart. It was too familiar, the same lost tone Grant had once had when he woke up on her couch. She smiled softly. That is all right. Sometimes memory takes its time coming back. You just need rest and care. Later that day, when she told Grant about the boy, he grew quiet. His name is Noah, she said. The police found him near the river. No ID, no family yet. Grant's gaze softened. It sounds like history repeating itself. Lena nodded. Maybe we are meant to pay it forward. The next morning, they visited Noah together. Grant brought a sketchbook and some pencils. When I was lost, he told the boy, someone gave me a reason to keep going. Maybe this can be yours. At first, Noah barely spoke. But over the weeks, with gentle patience, he began to draw simple lines that turned into whole worlds on paper. Grant and Lena watched as the boy's confidence grew, and so did something else, a quiet understanding that healing was never one-sided. One evening, as the sun set behind the clinic, Noah looked up from his sketchbook and asked, Why are you both so kind to me? You do not even know me. Grant smiled. Because once, we were saved by kindness too, and the best way to thank life for that is to pass it on. Noah's eyes filled with tears, and Lena placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Someday, you will do the same for someone else. Months later, Noah's family was found. They had been searching tirelessly, and the reunion was emotional. Before he left, Noah gave Grant the sketchbook, its last page showing a drawing of the oak tree with lanterns shining in its branches. Below it, he had written, Thank you for finding me. That night, as the foundation staff closed for the day, Lena and Grant returned to the memorial garden. The lanterns swayed softly in the wind. Lena looked at the drawing in her hands. He drew the tree just like it really looks. Grant nodded. That is because he saw what it meant. They stood there quietly, watching the lights shimmer through the branches. The same place where rain once fell now glowed with a gentle peace. You know, Lena said softly, when I stopped on that highway years ago, I thought I was just saving one life, but it never really ended there. Every patient, Every clinic, every person helped it all came from that one night. Grant looked at her, pride and tenderness in his eyes. That is the thing about kindness. It does not end, it multiplies. He reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. If there is one thing I have learned, it is that love is not about grand moments. It is about the quiet ones, the ones that keep you grounded even after the storm. Lena smiled, her eyes glimmering in the lantern light. Then I guess our story is not about miracles at all. Grant shook his head gently. No, it is about remembering what really matters. The wind carried the faint sound of laughter from the clinic behind them, and for a moment, time seemed to pause again just like it had the night they first met. But this time, it did not stop in tragedy. It stopped in gratitude. Together they stood beneath the oak tree, surrounded by light, knowing that every second from that first rain-soaked night had led them exactly where they were meant to be. Years passed quietly, and with each one, the Carter Foundation grew stronger, yet somehow simpler. The world still saw Grant and Lena as symbols of hope, but to them, life had become about the small things, the morning walks through the garden, the smell of fresh coffee at sunrise, the laughter of patients echoing through clinic halls. They had learned that real miracles were not loud. They were steady, like the rhythm of a heart that refused to stop beating. One summer evening, the sky burned gold over the city. Grant sat on a bench beneath the old oak tree, now towering and full of light. In his hands was the same wristwatch Lena had once found on him years ago. Its hands moved smoothly now, ticking in quiet harmony with the breeze. He smiled to himself, remembering every second that had brought them here. Lena appeared beside him, holding 2 cups of tea. She handed one to him and sat down. "Still keeping time?" she asked. "Always," he said, glancing at her, "though I think it has been keeping us instead." They sat together, watching the lanterns flicker on as dusk settled. Families from the Foundation's clinics wandered through the garden, their voices warm and full of gratitude. Among them was Noah, now older, tall, and confident, helping a younger child learn to draw under the same tree where his own journey had begun. Lena smiled softly. "It feels like everything has come full circle." Grant nodded. "That is the beauty of healing. It never really ends. It just keeps passing forward." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you ever think about the night we met?" "Every day," he said. "Sometimes I still hear the rain, the tires, the sound of your voice. I remember not knowing who I was, but somehow knowing I could trust you. That moment changed everything." Lena looked up at him, her eyes gentle. "Maybe we were both lost, and that is why we found each other." He smiled. "If I could relive it all, even the confusion and the pain, I would, because every second of it led me here." Ugh. The wind stirred through the leaves, carrying the faint scent of roses from the nearby flower beds. The lanterns above them swayed softly, their glow reflecting in Lena's eyes. "Do you ever worry about time running out?" she asked quietly. Grant turned the watch over in his palm, the engraving catching the light. "Not anymore. Time gave me back everything I once lost: my memory, my purpose, my heart. And if it ever stops again, I know it will stop in the right place." "Oh." Lena reached for his hand, squeezing it gently, then let it stop right here. They sat in silence, the world slowing around them. The oak tree rustled, the lanterns glowed, and somewhere nearby, a child's laughter echoed like a song. For them, that moment was everything, a quiet reminder that true love does not just survive storms, it grows from them. As night fell, the lights in the garden shimmered like stars, and the clock in Grant's hand ticked steadily on a sound not of passing time, but of a life finally complete. And so, where one act of kindness had begun, love endured, healed, remembered, and eternal.